Hello and welcome back to Leaving Hillsong. We had a break here for a couple of weeks and I'm so glad that you're back with us. Nothing major, just life getting in the way of making podcasts. And today I'm joined by Lisa, who I've known through different networks for a while, but again, haven't sat down with her and heard her full story. And well, there's just so much to it as you're here. I will mention to you that we discussed the Royal Commission and child sexual abuse, as Lisa is a survivor and an advocate of survivors. So just letting you know, Lisa's been married for over 25 years, I think, and she has 5 kids. So she brings a very maternal influence to this chat today, and I hope you'll enjoy it. It's called A Minor Thing. I've known you, Lisa, through, I guess, Facebook networks and social media and various like church abuse sites and issues and activism, and found out that you'd also been involved in an AOG, Hillsong related church, and thought we'd find out a bit more. So the old question, how did you end up in an AOG church?
I ended up in an AOG church originally because I had been in and out of psychiatric wards because of child abuse, and I always had a faith. I'd never been to a church ever in my life, and I'd always, I just believed in Jesus, I'll just say that. And then we had a good friend who happened to be a pastor, and I didn't want to go back to hospital. So he came over and him and his family just kept hanging out with us, and we're still very close with them. And the church just happened to be that they were going to literally 5 minutes from where we lived.
Sorry, by we at this point?
My husband and I.
Okay.
And my children, they were little.
Yes.
And so I was 26, I'm now 47, obviously. Yep. So, we just started going, got very involved, and, saw all the spiritual stuff, went down that deliverance kind of road, got really heavily involved in that myself.
What do you mean by deliverance?
Because of the abuse that I went through, it was demonic, put it that way, like satanic ritual abuse, I'll say it that way.
Yeah.
Some people have heard of that, but anyway, we stayed in that church for 7 years. So that was like a home for us because we didn't have any other family, because I cut off all my family. A church.
Why did you cut off your family?
Because of they were my abusers, basically. Wasn't it? No, not because of the church. That was previous.
Yep.
The church actually probably, that's probably why I went head first into it so quickly, because you get aunties, uncles, mums and father, the figures that you're just wanting so badly. And I thought, oh, they're all perfect because they're Christians. I was so naive. Of course, we're not all perfect. I just kept bumping into this woman who was younger than me through church things, and they just moved up to the Gold Coast from Hillsong, and they'd been youth pastors at Hillsong, and I started going to a couple of her meetings, which it was really small, and we just clicked. And she had little kids, I had little kids, so it just, went from there. I got in big trouble from my church for going to another church. I was called a Jezebel. I was called all sorts of names. That was quite traumatic.
Okay. What were the big differences? They're similar churches, or it was a
it was AOG back then, because now it's ACC. But I think our church it's been around a lot, like, I don't know, at that point, probably 25 years. So very, very like male dominated leadership. So it felt like I was back in my family, my birth family, like, oh, so it's conditional. Yeah. So then I kind of was like, no one tells me what to do. That's my personality. And I was like, if I want to go to another church, I don't need permission. But apparently that was the thing. You need permission from the head pastor, who we were quite close to go to another church. And I was like, no, this is not right for me. Anyway, and then they, brought us in and said, we've done all this stuff for you and for me personally. We've looked after you. No one's going to look after you like we have. And that's when I started to really see what was going on. And other, that was around the corner, just a female pastor. I'd never seen a female pastor really preach or anything like that. So that was all very like, wow. It was wow. I was young and it was refreshing. And I was like, oh, it just felt like not heavy and rules and then if I do something, I do it full on. So that's the same thing here. So this church that we went to. So it was not a Hillsong church as such, but they were definitely affiliated because their pastor was Brian Houston. Still, that's the way they operated.
Okay.
I don't think I'll name the church, but it was on the Gold Coast. Yeah, it quickly became very popular, I guess, because they were young. We were told, oh, you're just going there because they're young. And I was like, no, I'm going there because I'm not being abused. It's nice and fresh and people my age.
What was your relationship? Because if you'd been friends with those people for 7 years, what was that like once you'd moved churches?
It was really hard because the main head, like the head pastor, so our church was very much under Hillsong as well. So that AOG church too, all the pastors had to go to the conferences. We had to have all the Hillsong music. So when we had like a meeting with him to just say thank you, he just slammed me so hard and separated. It was like Shane was in the room, but he wasn't. And then he basically threatened my husband with his job. He said, if you go to this church, and because Shane, my husband, was working there doing like after school care, I guess that's what you call it. He's a teacher, right? He's the nicest guy, like he would never do it. He says, if you ever tell people, like more or less, take people from our church, more or less you won't have a job.
Yeah.
I didn't there and just was in awe because I'd never seen that side before. And the other pastor, him and his wife, who had basically taken us there under their wing, they were like a mum and a father to us. It was awkward. It's not now. Everything's fine now. We're still close with them. But it was, bumpy because they were indoctrinated as well. So it was just like, you do this or you're out. I can't really remember. I think because it was so traumatic, I just cut and left. But the Gold Coast is small. So you bump into people.
Yeah.
They ignore you. They kind of look through you. That's what happened.
I was wondering, yeah.
Yeah, so it was pretty traumatic. And I guess it was going to another church probably helped at that point because I cried buckets of tears and I grieved. I think I really grieved that they would treat us like that. And anyway, so the new pastors, they had 4 daughters, 4 little girls, trendy, cool. They had apparently, because I got to know her on like a friendship level before she was kind of like a pastor to me. That's how she drew people to her because she was very charismatic and friendly. Like everyone actually came because she was a great preacher and her husband was more not the best. So there was like 1,000 people within, I don't know, they'd been there for maybe a year. So they'd had 1,000 people. So that was off a lot of the churches because they're like, oh, here's these new Hillsong people coming, taking all our people. And I was like, oh, God, people have got their own mind and choice to go wherever they want. They had their own name, but they were still, I believe Hillsong helped start them up, definitely.
And they had come from Hillsong.
Because we saw the video of them being, what do you call it?
Released, is it?
Released, thank you. Deliberately blocked out the language, Christianese language.
The memory's a funny thing.
They used to play that on the big screen and say, oh, here's Brian, praying over us, and because we were amazing youth leaders and we had over 10,000 youth under us, and so that drew a lot of people who were just nosy, I guess, and liked Hillsong. The other thing that drew myself and my husband, they don't do tithing messages. It's really weird, or love offering and all that kind of stuff. That's really weird.
Didn't do them at all?
No.
No offering at all. Okay.
That was for the first 6 months, and then it just slowly started to trickle in.
Right.
Yeah, at the end. Gosh, there's so much. So we were there for 7 years too. I've only been at 2 churches. So then, you start to see the same pattern arise. They're younger, they're just different. They're using the Hillsong language. I'd never heard of an intern. I'm like, whoa, this is different. There's all these, lots of young people. They signed up for 12 months to serve. You serve God for a year. That was what it was called.
Okay. As an intern, yep.
But what they did, like I had a lot of the younger girls, I was probably in my early 30s, and I was just drawn to the younger ones who I could see were being basically abused. And I'd be like, you don't have to do that. Most of them were at like uni or working, and and they'd be looking after the kid, like her babies, like they were babies. So she'd be up preaching and just had newborn babies. So the thing was, you have a baby, you go to church like 3 or 4 days later after you've had the baby. That was a thing. It's like, look at me. I'm at church. I'm not missing church, even though I've had a baby. I just found that really strange as a mother of 5. But it was just like nothing I'd ever seen, I guess, compared to the other one. It was a well-oiled machine. I thought, they've done this before. They know what they're doing. I'd see the pastor, the male pastor. He was very egotistical kind of dude who come across very nice and kind and all that. He wouldn't drive his own car. He'd have the young ones, the interns drive him. And I remember going outside and I saw him just roasting this young guy because he got the wrong coffee. This is when I was starting to wake up.
And the coffee is the thing. Coffee keeps coming up as an important thing in this place.
Yeah. If you were the intern for the pastor, you were the coolest person. And then they had all the other little minions, that did all the house cleaning and the cleaning the toilets and putting up Christmas trees, cleaning their pools for free. So, and babysitting the children. It was just a big eye opener for me. I'm a helicopter parent, so my female pastor would be like, oh, do you want to let the girls come and stay over? My girls. I'm like, no.
And Lisa, I don't think that's helicoptering at all. There seems to be so much of this free babysitting going around, and it's made me ask a lot of questions about how those kids have ended up, because they've been fielded out a lot of the time from nannies to babysitters to volunteers and creches and visiting churches and Sunday schools. It's a real concern, yeah.
It's like watching someone being abused and you doing nothing. And I felt like I was not an enabler, but just like, I can't watch this anymore. This isn't okay. Because I loved her girls, her daughters deeply. Like I'd have them at my house anytime, but I didn't want them traipsing around with, who knows who.
There'd have to be a lot of pastors' kids out there who have ended up in bad situations. It's just got to be. It's epidemic, this babysitting volunteer thing.
I felt like I was the outsider because I was such a people pleaser at that time, and it was so hard. I was like, no, I just can't. I didn't have an answer. It was just a no. You would get the silent treatment for a little bit. I went to everything. I was involved in everything. I was in prayer, like I was part of a prayer group. I led groups where they women had been sexually abused. So I did all that kind of stuff and I loved it. And then you just start to see things. Discerning, that's the Christian word. I just started to see stuff like, people would be in the green room, she had to have someone do her makeup and she had to have that all done. Her husband would be like, here's my hot wife, and all that kind of stuff started happening. And me and my husband would just sit there and go, what? Can we not? Because we know what's going behind the scenes. We know that that's not how he treats her. He treats her like So this is over the 7-year period. So we get to 2014. I actually had my last child in that church, number 5. I can't remember how old she was, but she just hated going to kids' church. And then eventually all my kids are like, no, we're not going to kids' church. We hate it. They hated it. And I thought, there's something not right. So they would stay in the service with us.
So something must have changed there then.
Yeah.
Because had they liked it before?
Maybe because they were getting older, but they just said, Mum, we don't learn anything. It's just playing games. And I was starting to feeling uncomfortable about it as well. I was just like, I don't feel like I want to put my kids in there. And I'd have people come up to me and say, Lisa, because you look like this and the way you dress and that's why you're in all the groups. I'm like, huh? Well, I was oblivious. I thought I was just being me, just because I love helping people and I love people.
But and then look like what and dress like what?
Oh, because I didn't, I dressed a certain way, like Hillsong people, apparently. I didn't even know. I was like, I don't know, is there a dress code? Apparently there was. Like, you can laugh about it now, but I didn't realise that people were like, that was a thing. People who weren't like that were feeling left out because
very much a thing, yes.
They weren't getting the attention.
Yeah.
Probably a year before it all went to crap was we were asked if we wanted to pastor a church in LA, my husband and myself. So he did Bible college.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was all pretty full on. And then she started saying to me, I know we just have little conversations that just, some things just stick out. And she said, we're not doing anything right now because we're just tracking you and Shane. Right. So, tracking us.
Oh, okay.
I remember going home and going, what the tracking me? I'm a grown woman with 5 children and a husband.
Really interesting word, isn't it?
It really triggered me.
Mm.
And it was like, okay, now I see you. I see you. I see who you are. I couldn't unsee that. And that word just played over and over in my mind. And I was like, this is not good. We did have like a system, just like Hillsong has, kingdom givers and all that. Like you paid $1,000 and then $5,000 and then $10,000.
What do you get with those things?
You get to go on holidays with the pastors.
Oh.
And most of the people who were the $10,000 gifts were the dodgiest ever. Like, I'd tell her, I'd say, I don't know what you're doing. They're dodgy ads.
Okay.
Because it's money.
Mm.
That year, I started feeling sick, literally just in my stomach every time I was going to church. And I knew something was going on, but I couldn't put a finger on it. They were slowly distancing themselves away from people, but then still putting on the, the smile and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, then Brian Houston, I've been to, I think I'd been to 1 or 2 conferences. I've been to Colour once during that time, and then I went to the actual big conference, and I just did not like him. I just thought he was arrogant. And yeah, and people were like, oh, but he's, you just got to get past that. Like, how do
you get past that?
Yeah, and he just irritated me. Then we heard through our friends who became pastors under our pastors. Everyone's a pastor in Hillsong Church. You just get called a pastor, even if you've never got that. certificate apparently. So, but they were young, and we got along really well with them, and we became great friends with them. And slowly but surely, everything was their fault. Money, not enough people coming. And then next minute there was rumors, gossip, that they'd gone over to Canada. They're having a sabbatical. They used to have them nearly every 3 months, I think, and we all paid for it. They went to Canada, came back, and were told that God told us we've got to go to Canada. But when we were at this church, he had a plan that, there's going to be many campuses and all this kind of stuff. And we tried that and it failed. And now all of a sudden they're going to Canada.
And these are the pastors that were 2IC, so they're not the main.
No, head ones, the main ones.
Okay.
They'd gone for their sabbatical, and the second in charge ones were, they'd look after the church while they were away, kind of thing. And then when the main pastors got back, they'd cop all the stuff if nothing, not enough people came or money. And we had Carl Lentz come just before they left, which was kind of weird. It started, we're going in like 4 weeks. I was like, every time I go to church, I was like feeling physically ill. And I think it was just probably me feeling stuff that was going on, I guess. I don't know. And so I spent most of my time in the bathroom instead of in the service.
That's terrible. That's real, and it's terrible.
Yeah, and I was like, didn't really question it, which is strange, and that's how I knew. I mean, I look back now, that's how I knew it was a cult. What? I've gone from one cult to another cult.
Okay, so how did you know? Because of becoming physically sick?
That's how my body just responds.
Had it done that the last time?
Yeah, and when I've all through my life at different times. I think it's definitely a miss. And so, okay, so now they're having their going away party, they're leaving, there's tears and there's confusion, and there's like, okay, they're going. So they're gone. And then we got him and his wife, Steve, I'm not sure. Can't think of him. But
they've gone, they've disappeared, and then Brisbane guy comes.
Doesn't matter. He's an older guy, him and his wife. Yeah. They came and gave us what we felt like a lecture that the church isn't running well. And it was really quite in your face. It was traumatic. Everything was trauma at that time, because I had envisioned for myself and my family that was just where we were going to be forever. Like, my kids are growing up here, that's it. So we never, ever thought the main pastor was always like, we're going to have churches all around the world. It was just a shock and betrayal, I guess, was what I felt. My husband dealt with it differently to me. I don't think it's men just do. He just was kind of like, oh, well, whatever kind of thing. I was like, no, I'm devastated.
Or perhaps men find it more difficult to talk about all of that relational stuff. It's massive.
So I felt really alone, because I thought, am I going crazy? Like, this isn't normal and this isn't okay to just tell especially people who'd been there for day one, to give them this false hope that we are going to build this, and this. And then you're like, oh, you've gone on a holiday, come back, God's called us to Canada. So that was awkward. And we have that guy from Brisbane come, and then we had started getting the worship team would get up and do their 3, how many songs they do. And then we'd have to screen, and Brian Houston would be he was our pastor.
Okay. So, and that had not happened before?
No. He came once in person, that I recall. Anyone who's listening and has done church, you madly get your kids ready early in the morning. Everyone's got to look perfect. In my head, we're always running late. You always have a fight in the car on the way to church. So we get there, and I remember I was sitting up the back, which we used to have stickers for our names because we were like the cool people. This is before Brian came, so we didn't get the stickers anymore, Tan. I took the stickers away. I just had this thing. I felt like really I was getting sicker and sicker, and I was like, why am I sitting here watching this man on a screen? And he did allude to, like, he saved our church from ruin, that my pastors were in a lot of debt and that they'd helped them. Because I don't know if it was the day he came in person. It probably was. He was talking about the Royal Commission. One of my abusers is my biological dad. Like, that wasn't, I've never hidden that. That was gone, I'd done a statement and stuff like that. So I had friends who knew about that.
I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah.
Thank you. So very passionate about, obviously, child sexual abuse. So he gets up and he says, I've got to go to the Royal Commission, and basically it's the devil's fault kind of thing. I just sat there. I felt like, when you feel like you're in a massive room and you're the only person.
Yes.
And I'm like,
yes,
listening to this, because I identified. So I went, okay, so my dad's a pedophile, your dad's a pedophile, but you're standing up for him and saying that he didn't, it was like a minor thing that happened. He didn't. But I had already started researching and was looking at, like, keeping up with all the Royal Commission stuff. And then that's how it all just kind of went bang at once.
And that's such an important point that you make there, because there are so many people who have got parents who have been or are sex offenders, and we don't have different standards for them as human beings because of what their parents did and how hard it was on them in terms of protecting other people. And you make that point so naturally. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I was in shock. Number one, because he was, a very prominent pastor. Number two, I've been following a lot of their stuff for years, but when he got up there and basically accused HA, now I get why you're so defensive of your father. I spoke to a few people because I needed clarification for myself. I'm not keeping my family in a church where someone is covering up for their father when I've done complete opposite, even though it was the hardest thing I've ever done, and my family cut me off and called me all the things.
Yeah.
But it was the thing I ever done. So I was confused, and that's why I was like, no, we can't be here. After I read Brett's statement, because I'd done many statements myself, I was just horrified. I read all the letters, between the pastors, and it was a paper trail of betrayal of a young child.
Oh, it's horrific. It's just this, it's the worst.
That is how it is still today in all churches, in all those types of churches.
Yep, in the closed systems, yeah.
The irony of it all is that we started going in 2001, and that was apparently when Brian found out, which I knew in my gut. There is because I'm a survivor, like, there is no way that you did not know. I mean, I couldn't prove that.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way that you didn't know. What, you just, on 2001, you just found out? I don't think so.
It is all very interesting, isn't it, that matter?
Yeah, I'm like Miss Detective going, I need to make sure that I'm not just, this isn't my story. This is someone else's story. But just is not adding up.
And that's fine. So was this church now officially a Hillsong church now? Did it have the logo?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, everything was changed.
When the pastors had left, or when did that happen?
Yeah, it was like overnight. Hillsong, the front, like, when you walk in, it was all renovated.
What do you know about like who ended up owning the land and stuff, like the buildings? Did they become?
Okay, so we had one on, that was our main campus, and then we had another one which is still there. So both of them became Hillsong pretty much overnight. Yeah, but there was a lot of reprimanding, and Joel Bell would come, and everyone was like, "Oh, Joel Bell's coming," But it's just weird. Like, they're just people. No, I didn't like him, because I was like, here's the guy who's like going to court with Brian Houston, and
Thank you. Did he come to reprimand you?
In a nice way.
So then after the big Brian chat about the satanic attack at the Royal Commission again, how much longer before you were out of there? Because it must have been a pretty big upheaval.
So because Brian, obviously Brian's the head of all of right? So we get to see him every so often on until we got our new pastors that were sent from Hillsong Sydney. They got a house for them on the beach. And so a lot of my friends, like close friends, were like, "Oh, you got to meet him. He's a really nice guy." And I'm like, I don't want to meet them. So a close friend of mine brought me over to the lady pastor. The couple were probably really nice, these new pastors, but I was just like, I am done. My friend took me over to meet, like, under duress to meet her. And I think I just, disassociated, went to my car and just screamed. I couldn't stop screaming and crying. So I had this massive meltdown, I guess. I just had a breakdown. My friends were like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "What's wrong with you?"
Yeah, look, it makes sense after trauma on trauma, and then being faced with another fresh set of the unknown, and
just so visceral, the feeling of like, I cannot believe these people. And so I can't remember. It was probably 2 weeks, 3 weeks at the most. We just stopped going. We didn't even have we do family meetings. We did not even have it. It was just like I don't know, we just didn't go. It was like we just stopped. And that's when everything started to, like, people who, were really close to you would just stop talking to you or come visit me.
And I mean, what was that like, going from all of that and being so involved to nothing? Or did you start another church somewhere else?
No. We had, really good friends that I just didn't ever charge them for years, just because I wanted to do their hair, right? Whole family. We've been friends for over 7 years, and all of a sudden there's no phone calls. "Oh, can you come cut our hair?" It was like, now I look back, like, I was like absolutely devastated. But now I look back, I think it's the cult mentality. I don't think they do it deliberately to hurt you. They just keep going. They just keep going on to the next thing with this new pastor, and like, he's amazing, and it's Hillsong, and it's awesome, and it's, they've got more money to spend on things. And so that was a bit of we just had to laugh about it, because we were like, wow, this is real.
How long did you experience the effects of all that for? Like, how long does that, and how did the kids go with it? And
I still am 10, I believe. I believe even another friend of mine she's kind of what I would call like a hippie Christian. We were talking about it one day, and she said to me, Lisa, it's PTSD, like it's church PTSD. It's real. This was different. It was hard to, because you can't say anything against the church. Then you're like, you're bringing down the bride, and oh gosh. So then I just went hard and I was angry. So yeah, that was it for me. I just was like, I'm not going to shut up. I'll just talk about whatever I want.
Yeah, for sure. So where's your faith at the moment after all of these experiences?
I already always had, this is a strange thing. When we first, we'll go back to the original, I'm 26-year-old girl who's nearly having another breakdown. Pastor comes over and, he's cool. He's a surfer and he's just a lovely man, like very fatherly. So we clicked instantly, our whole families. And he said to me that night, he said, do you want to give your heart to Jesus? And I looked at him like, what? I don't know what that means. What are you talking about? And he goes, like give your life over to Jesus. I'm like, I already know who he is. Well, do you want to say the prayer? I'm like, sure, I'll say the prayer. At that point, I was like, I wanted anything to fix me. But so we'll go back now to now. I still have that same, for me personally, that's the only thing that's kept me probably not losing my mind.
Yeah, beautiful.
Not for everybody. Some people completely just like go nuts, stuff ya, whatever. And I totally get that too. But I already had my own experience from when I was a little girl.
Okay.
So no, take that away from me. That's where the anger came from, I think, where people would say, oh, you backslidden, or all those sort of stupid words.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that's another kind of attack, isn't it? That, you never really knew God, or you were never really saved, and so you don't know what you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so does my husband. He's the same as me. My kids have struggled because they went to a Christian school. But we just talk openly about it, like, because everyone's different. And I'm like, if you don't want to believe in God, then that's up to you. Like, I'm not that kind of a parent. I would never push it on them. Yeah, it's up to them. That's their journey.
What would you say to a 26-year-old Lisa who, met these really nice people, and you got on really well, and their church was really nice? Like, how do people make these kinds of decisions without giving up too much, ending up with PTSD? I guess it's because it doesn't just happen suddenly. It
definitely didn't happen suddenly. What would I say to her? I feel sad for her because she had a vision that very naive, even though I felt like I'd lived 2 lives before that age. Very naive in thinking. I thought in my head a Christian, that they were all good people.
I don't think that's uncommon. I totally understand. I don't think. Yeah.
So I would say to her, just listen to your gut, and don't ever let anyone control you again.
Yeah, beautiful.
Ever.
Beautiful.
Because you have a good brain and you're a good, kind person, and that's all I ever wanted, to just help people. That's all.
Thank you.
That's okay.
Thank you so much.